Hello and welcome, I'm Kira Scribner, and today I came home from a Christmas party and I was like, I want to talk about wintry things because often I hate winter, but sometimes I love it. And sometimes I'm like, it's beautiful and wonderful and all of those things. So I thought I would highlight the occasional times when I feel this way and make a video. And since when I did a quick, cursory Google YouTubing of wintry book tags and didn't find anything, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make one. So I made all of these questions last hour. So if they don't really relate to you, that's okay. You can adjust them. This is also very, very much based on the northern hemisphere, specifically Canada, which I know lots of people don't have winter at this time. And also lots of people have winter where it's not snowy and stuff. So if you want to adjust or change or anything, it's just your wintry tag. So feel free. I would love for you to do this because I love being able to share questions and see what people's answers are. But now with no further ado, I will go into question one, which is, as winter becomes cold and we curl up in coats and blankets and all of those things, what is a book that you feel comforted, seen, you feel warm? And I really, really had to pick Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. I think this is such a lovely book. It makes me happy because she's just like a little goth girl who everyone thinks she's cursed because she's born on the 13th or on the Nevermore. And she's been told her whole life that on her 11th birthday, she will die. And then on her 11th birthday, this guy who's this very interesting, joyful man comes and is like, do you want me to be your patron? I live in this crazy hotel that's living, it changes and it adapts for what people need. And I am a patron of the society, of a magic society, and I would love you to come and be my person and go into competitions to try to go to this magic school. And we do, and it is a delightful world with so much great world building. You feel it, everyone travels by umbrellas, there's talking animals, there's all of these things, and I really, really love the joy. It feels like childhood wonder. It's one of those books that you're reading and it feels like a classic when you're reading it. It is so beautiful. And each one has a wintry kind of Christmassy scene, and it's not called Christmas, it's called Yuletide or something like that. I really, really love it, and I feel like it's a perfect book for all ages, and it's so lovely. So that is a book that I feel comforted, I feel seen as my little old goth girl in my heart. And then question two is, there is a perfection on a cold winter night when the moon shines out and you have crisp air in your lungs and you just want to freeze the moment. I don't know if you feel that, but so often you get out of the car and you've had a great night and you're walking and you're like, it's so pretty, I just want to capture this. And sometimes I have that with books where you're enjoying this book so much you just want to savor it. So that's the main meat of the question, other than my lyricism, which is what is this book that you really just wanted to not end? You wanted to know what happened, but you always wanted to just sit in the moment of reading it. And this one is probably a strange book because happens to me a lot. I really love sitting in books. The one that I thought about is On Her Own Ground, The Life and Time of Madame C.J. Walker. And I really loved it because we're telling someone's history. It's a very quiet, not the most bombastic or quick or fast-paced biography, but I really liked it. It's done by her great-granddaughter. She's a woman who was born only 5 years after slavery. Her family was enslaved. Goes on to become one of the first millionaires, specifically by giving hair products and stuff like that for Black women. So it's not only did she become a millionaire and stuff like that and use her influence and stuff like that for the Black community, she also did it by giving something that was necessary and important and that allowed dignity and respect and stuff. I think that I've heard some things that she's not a completely uncontroversial thing because there's some things related to that, but part of her thing was that so often Black women had to hide their hair and stuff like that when they were slaves, and then when they weren't slaves, they weren't really given hair products to allow themselves to express their hair in a way that made them feel proud and stuff like that. So she was able to give them hair and to be you look beautiful and stuff like that. And she hired Black women to train other Black women, so it became a social thing as well. And it sounds like such a great story, and I really enjoy the era of Reconstruction and the early 20th century. And she talks about politics, and she talks about talking at women's events and the ways that she wasn't invited to suffragist things, or they would say that we're going to prioritize women's rights over Black rights, or we're gonna look for Black rights but we're not gonna look for women's rights, and the ways in which she exists in that and has conversations with them, and the cameos, and as she goes into the 20s and her daughter who becomes very involved in Harlem and stuff. It's such an interesting book, and I was I just want to sit here and learn about all of these things forever, and I don't want it to end. And then question three is, as the world kind of quiets down and slows down a lot, I find myself really gearing toward big classics and fantasy. They might be different for you, so what are the books that you kind of go to in this season, and then what are your favorites or the most recent books you read in that? I'm gonna choose some favorites out of both of them. I think Anna Karenina is just a fantastic book. I really, really love reading it, and I read it in November winter, and it is the perfect book to just put on the audiobook and listen to, and like, I don't know, just sit in the things, or like to be curled up in a winter day, and I love it. It's so large and so funny. It just like, it doesn't have high things. It's just a very like interpersonal story. And then the David Bad trilogy by S.A. Chakrabarty is also amazing. I especially like the second and third books, but they're big fantasy books based on South Asian and Egyptian history and lore and mythology and on jinn, and they're so good, and they create this beautiful world that is adjacent. And it's set in the early 19th 1800s, and it's really, really good. I really enjoyed the stories and the characters and their interactions and stuff, and it was a book that I didn't really love the first book that much, and then as I went on it became a favorite. Question 4 is, as the year goes on, we tend to have like this crush of like shorter and shorter and shorter days, which tends to make me think that I want to read shorter books because extension span, but also at the end of the year, we're also looming toward the end of the year where we're going to have no time before reading challenges. So I thought recommending some short books would be really great. So first of all, I have Cranford, which I love. It's just like these old ladies just doing stuff, like reading old love letters and talking about life and just being like, I very much like slice of life books, and this is like an 1840 slice of life book, which is quite short and very good. And then I also thought of Endelcy by Amina Kane. I really love this book. It begins with talking about her working maintenance and stuff like that in an art gallery, and then falling in love with this rich man who, whether she's actually in love with him, yeah, but marrying this rich man, and he gives her a sitting room and stuff, and she calls it her study because she's writing and wanting to be an author, but he calls it her sitting room. And it talks so much about writing and ambition and about women's place in the thing. It's a book that I read and then I stopped reading it, wrote so many notes, and like wanted to start it again to like get some things, and immediately finished it again. Like I read it twice in things, and I could have read it again. Like I find it so fascinating as a woman and the way that we are seen as writers and the ways that we see in society, and it's just such an interesting and good book, and it is very short. I think it's like 120 pages. This one is going to make me a little sassy, but every year we have new singers who come out and they're like, you know what, I'm going to make a new Christmas classic. And you're like, we're gonna forget it in 2 minutes. So what is a book that you were like super anticipating but just disappointed you so bad? Like they're like, this is a classic, and you're like, no one's gonna remember it, or I'm not gonna remember it. And these ones might be a little spicy, as they always are, but The Jasmine Throne was a book that I thought was gonna be the coolest thing ever. And getting through it was like hellish. Like I was so bored. I've heard other people rank it 5 stars, so if that's your thing, go forth and be happy and merry and all of those things, but I struggled so far to get through it, and I was like, there's no way I'm continuing on. And then Small Favors by Erin A. Craig. I loved her other work, and I was so anticipating this book, and I didn't like it. It has to do a lot with like isolation and survivalism, and it just was not a great fit. It's a winter book as well, and like does with all of those things. It's kind of like a horror meets Little House on the Prairie, and was not into it. And then question 6 is a similar vein, which is Christmas covers. All the songs that everyone covers, and they're not originals, but they are redone with a little bit of flavor. And what is a retelling you love or hate, depending on how you feel about this practice? I'm gonna go for some books that I hate, because, you know, I love retellings. They're one of my favorite genres, but there's some books that I don't like as much. And Small Favors is also a retelling, did not love it. But The Harris by Molly Greasley, I wanted to love this so much. It was so bland, and I feel like it's so over the top and just like failed so badly for me. Other people loved it. It's like, I think I prefer things that are more either humorous or like in line with like what Jane Austen writes. But this is a retelling of Anne de Burgh, which is also probably why like I thought it was going to be so good, because I'm like a small minor character dealing with like addiction, because it's a story of her being given laudanum as a child, and then that's how like she grew up and stuff. And it's just, there are very lush descriptions that I actually enjoyed, but then nothing actually manifested. A lot of it is very, very boring, and I wasn't into it. So it is a book that I feel like it represents a lot of covers of Christmases where it's like promises something new or inventing or just like a new thing, and it's like an author or something like that I normally like, and it just is kind of a nothing. So question number 7 is about squirrels or other animals who live in colder climates and collect all of this food source all through the days, and then the winter comes so they can hibernate. And what is a book that you collected and then you have been hibernating on? And this is kind of based on books Unbound, like mashed potato books. And this is one that I collected, so excited about, and then immediately have been hibernating on, partly because I'm so excited about it that I can't read it. But this is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. It is about the wife of William Shakespeare, but he is not named in it. It's about their story and about their son, specifically because of the fact that he named his very, very famous play Hamlet after his son Hamnet, who died at about age 12 during the time right before he wrote that. And him and his wife had a very contentious relationship. A lot of people have theorized and thoughts on it. I really am excited to read this book that brings to the forefront a woman who is often forgotten by society. So super, super excited for this. I have just been sitting here not reading it. So question 8 is about how Wintery is kind of the ending and the beginning. We are the transition from one year to another. So I thought it would be really cool to do 2 questions based on what kind of reader you are. So first of all, whether it's the first book in a series and the last book of a series, like which ones you loved, either the same series or not, or a goal that you want to accomplish or you have accomplished for this year, and a goal or something that you plan to do next year. So I'm going to do the goal. I really wanted to read a book from every continent this year, and I have done that. I didn't fully do an Australian one. I did a New Zealand fantasy book, so I didn't do one that was based as much in New Zealand land and stuff like that. So I really do hope to kind of fit in another book that's more naturally New Zealandish or Australian or Oceanian, whatever you want to call that continent, which we never have quite names for. But yes, I think it would be really cool to read one of those. But I love just doing that and being like, okay, I'm reading books from all over the world and having that. And then a goal that I want to do in 2023 is doing plays. This year I found out that I love plays, and I read probably 5 or 6, and I really want to focus on reading plays next year and really diving into the things that aren't just like Shakespeare or the classics, reading some more contemporary ones, reading some more classic ones, and just enjoying it. Question 9 is Ode to the Song that I was listening to as I prepared it, one by Darren Criss and Adam Lambert, another retelling that I actually like, so that's good. And this one is Everyone is Waiting for the Man with the Bag. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to ask, what is a book that you are really, really excited to read, even though you think it might be a mixed bag? And for this one, I thought of A Farewell to Arms. And this one, I was like, oh, there's lots of options and stuff. And then I looked over my shelves and I saw A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway. And I was like, yes, this is a book that I'm so psyched for because World War I is like one of my favorite things to study. And Ernest Hemingway is a fairly well-known author. I don't think that me and Ernie are going to be like best friends or anything, but I still really, really want to read it. So it's like a book that like my excitement to read it because of its content is super up, even though like I started it, I think probably like 5 years ago now, and read like a fair bit of it. Well, I read like a chapter of it and I was like, yeah, it's talking about women not great. So yeah, it's an interesting book that I really want to read, even though I know it's going to be a mixed bag. Okay, so I'm really excited for question 10 because it's about snowbirds, which is a term we use in Canada to describe people who, you know, are normally older, but sometimes are just more with disposable lives and incomes and are a little bit richer, but they live in Canada, but for, 3 to 4 months in the colder months, they go to warmer climates, often the United States, and they go and live there for a time, but they come back to Canada during the rest of the year. So I thought it would be really cool to ask, what is a genre that you don't live in, but that you sometimes visit? For me, this is historical fiction. I love historical fiction. I just don't read it very often, and when I do, I'm always delighted by it. And romance and contemporary both are books that I don't pick up as much, but enjoy. Mystery and horror are also in the thing. So these are all genres that I do read. They're just not my like staples in the same way. So I thought that was a cool question because we all have genres that we are known for and that we enjoy and we yell at the clouds about. And then we have the ones that, sneak in every once in a while. And then question 11 is, winter is often a little bit slower and cozier and can offer more time to be reflective and contemplative. I often listen to like podcasts and nonfiction. So I wanted to ask about a book that either helped you learn something or helped you understand yourself more. So I really, really liked Notable Native People. I have a really strong affection for any books that are like about people and just like a cursory overload of a lot of people with like their picture and then a short biography, and this book does it so well. And I especially love it because it has historical people from Native communities and stuff, and then it also has contemporary. It literally has singers and activists that were born in the 21st century on this. So I love that it's not only a historical rendering of some incredible people, but it's also a current thing of these are people you should like enjoy and support. And I think that's especially important when we're talking about Indigenous people, because so often there's that type or that belief that they only exist in the past. So by highlighting people who are like younger than a lot of people who be reading that, you're like, no, this is a continuing culture. This goes on. And it's something that I learned so much about, but you can also give to kids, and you can also like give to different people to be educated. And I love it because it's that short history that allows you to step into moments for a short time, but it's not like a big history test that a lot of people will never read. And then for a book that made me understand myself better, Before the Ever After by Jacqueline Woodson is a book that I think is critically underhyped. It deals with a young boy who I think is 13, and his father is slowly deteriorating from CTE. And this is a disease that is a little closer to my heart than some others, but it's a disease where, especially footballers, but people who have played a lot of sports and have had a lot of concussions, often start to radically decline in health in their 30s or 20s or 40s, and it kills them a lot. And Jacqueline Woodson looks at these things of how frightening it is to see someone who used to be your hero start to deteriorate. And it's his father, who's a famous football player, who, always was kind, who was always loving, but now is yelling or can't move or all of these things. And as someone who's had a lot of concussions, who worried about this developing, this was one that was thrown around when I started getting sick. Thankfully, because of the fact that my mood changes have never been dramatic or anything like that, they have discounted it. But it really represents the scariness of you or yourself or someone in your family just having a radical change of health, and how do you deal with not being the person you were and not having the same future that you hoped. And it was something that it was a book that I cried for so long. I read it the day it came out in 2020, and it still holds such a candle in my heart as a book that is representation of chronic illness and of onset of health and what it means for families. And it's a really powerful book, and she's a well-known author, but it's not a book that I've heard many people talk about. And then question 12 is, what is a book that represents winter for you? I'm not the most Christmassy read Christmas books thing, so if you are that person, here is your spotlight. But I thought I'd talk about Before the Coffee Gets Cold, because this is a book that I think represents what a lot of people think of Christmassy, which is second chances, family, warmth. And this is a book about time travel where everyone can go to this small cafe in Tokyo and they can travel back to the past, but they can only travel to the same cafe for the length on which the coffee is hot. And it's such a touching thing about time travel and how relationships and everything interacts, and it's about second chances and about families. And I think it was also originally a play and then became short stories in this collection, and they're interconnected, and I really, really love it. And we're going back to plays and stuff, so this is a collection of books that I love, that make me feel happy, that make me feel seen, that make me feel entertained and enjoyed and learning about the world and emotional and all of those things. And I'm so happy that you've taken this journey with me, that you've learned about these books with me and done the questions. I would really, really love if you would do it yourself, if you're into winter at all, or if you're in a wintry time. And I tag everyone. I will leave some people tagged below, but I really, really ask everyone to do it, and I would love to hear your questions either in video form or in the comments. And happy Christmassy, wintry, snow-loving everything, and I will see you next time.